the button. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you hanging out with us on this fine Wednesday evening. Glad you're here. We are going to be talking about fish tonight. I know it's shocking. I know it's amazing.
I'm on the wrong live stream.
Yep. It's going to be all about fish, not carpentry. Thank goodness, because I don't know that much about carpentry. Otherwise, carpentry, it's a hard word to say. It's like roads.
Road.
Yep. So anyway, thanks for being here. We are going to be talking about the gourami. I thought it'd just be cool. I thought it'd be cool because there are so many different types. There's a gourami for just about everybody. And
There is. Yeah.
is it true to say that we've had gouramis in the fish room the entire time? Yes. Yes, it is. Because even right now, we have gouramis in that bottom 125. And so I don't think we have gone since we had the tanks reset up back in the 00s, I am fairly certain we have always had gouramis in our tanks at one point, consistently. Might not always be the same type, but we've had them.
Yeah,
so it's kind of cool.
Right now, I don't have any sparkling gouramis, and it's bothering me.
Well, it's
weighing on my heart.
Well, you know, that is something that you're going to have to get over, and something that you're going to have to just kind of talk through in your own head. So, Bougie Fish says, are paradise fish considered gouramis? They are very similar in the sense that they are labyrinth fish, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first, before we get into the gouramis, I do want to mention, of course, like we always do, videos and places we're going to be in the coming couple of weeks. So past videos, let's see here. What have we done? Sunday. I did. Was that my species profile? Yeah, it was my species profile on the blue eye red rainbow. Pseudomogo luminatus. And if you haven't seen that video and you like smaller fish, check it out because it's an awesome fish. It is definitely one where maybe in a 5, but really in a 10-gallon, if you want something that's got great color, great finish, and really cool bright blue eyes, that might be the fish for you because they are awesome. And so that was Sunday.
Little things.
And they're I already said fins.
Well, yeah, but they're more magic, so they need a special name, and I've already requested that they get a special name. They're like magic fins.
They're magic fins. Yes, they do have those. So that was on Sunday's video. On Monday, if you haven't checked out the Tank Talk podcast on YouTube or the other podcasting platforms, check it out because we had a brand new podcast out there for you there as well. Today on the Small Scape, what did you do?
Well, I shared that with the infamous tube plants that you can get the big box stores. Well, I was using them wrong.
Were you now?
Yeah. I just figured something out.
After all of these
Yes, unfortunately.
years,
unfortunately,
you were
yes.
using them wrong.
Yeah.
Did you teach
it's a mystery.
did you teach everybody else to use them
Yes, I did.
wrong?
Yes.
Did you fix your horrible mistake?
I thought maybe I was the only one who did not know this, but in fact, I was not the only last person to know this. It's a hidden gem.
Okay, so
you don't even know. You didn't see it. So
no, because I was very,
know what I'm talking
very
about.
busy today with a capital V and a capital Airy. So I didn't get to see it today, but apparently you should go to the Small Scape and check it out because...
The mystery with the twistery.
Yeah, you can see what she's been doing wrong her whole life. Tomorrow we'll have the Prime Timers video out. And then, of course, Sunday back on Prime Time Aquatics, we will have a special video for you. That's what's going on in the land of videos. Where we're going to be, really busy month for us. We are going to be at the Greenwater Aquarius Society swap on Saturday. That's the 14th in Tinley Park, Illinois. Our website has already been updated. If you are interested in pre-ordering fish, that is by far the best way to do it. It always breaks my heart when somebody gets there and it's like, oh, I heard you were going to have this fish. Do you have any? I'm like, well, no, we've got like 2 bags of, we brought, a whole mess load of bags and we've got 2 left on the table, but you can pre-order them. That way they are there waiting for you, already bagged. You don't have to worry. So definitely if you are interested in these swaps, like I said, our website, primetimeaquatics.com, has already been updated and the fish are available for pre-order. Thank you to everybody who's already put orders in because we've gotten quite a bit for a Greenwater swap. The week after that, if Tinley Park is not your jam, we have the GCCA, Greater Chicago Cichlid Association swap that is in Northbrook, so the northern part of the suburbs of Illinois. Northbrook, Illinois, and that is on Sunday the 22nd. And then if that's still not your thing, we'll be in Davenport, Iowa at the Quad City Swap on the 29th, Sunday the 29th.
Yeah,
so
if you just don't like Illinois, we'll be in
we've
Iowa.
got 3 weeks in a row of swaps. Then we get a couple weeks off, and then boom, we got a couple more next month. And that would bring us to the beginning of November. Well, I mean, not really, but Aquashella. Don't forget, Aquashella Daytona is coming up in November or whatever that is, 3rd, 4th, the first weekend, 3rd, 4th, or 4th, 5th. I don't remember exactly when. But that's happening. Kind of a cool location because, one, it's Florida. So for those of you who are in the northern states and it's getting chilly by that time, and you want to relive your summer experiences, that's the perfect time to do it. And I know we like going down there because instead of being probably in the, I don't know, at that time, maybe 40s, 50s if we're lucky, we get to experience the mid 70s again and some nice sunny weather. So
Yes.
pretty darn
If all
awesome.
goes well.
Yep. So did want to say a big thank you to Danny. Thank you very much for the super chat. I have 4 paradise fish in a 150 outdoor tub with white clouds and platies. That's a
Wow.
great mix. That is a really fun mix. We actually thought about doing a very similar mix at one point where I wanted to do paradise fish, white clouds, and the Variatus platy, I think, was the mix that we were going to do. And I don't think
Would have been cool.
It would have been cool had we done it. But unfortunately,
We didn't.
we didn't.
But you
Yeah.
did.
And also want to say thank you because I believe, we've got Jay Lou. That's a brand new prime timer. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. And of course, Noah. Noah gifted 5 new prime timers, some memberships. So thank you for doing that. That was very kind. Really appreciate it. So that's awesome. So yeah, that's the videos, what we're doing, where we're going, all that kind of thing. Tonight's talk is all about gouramis. Curious in the chat if you've kept gouramis, what is your favorite gourami? So
I
go
already
ahead.
put mine.
You already put yours. So you did,
I did.
something, and I didn't even.
Yeah. There was already an informal poll started by let's see here, Ted Riggs.
Well done.
Informal poll.
Yeah.
I took
So
part.
if you've got a favorite, would love to hear from you what your favorite is. I also want to say thank you. I see Lynn's here, Second Floor is here, Whip is here, our moderators are
Howdy,
hanging
howdy,
out with us.
howdy.
Thank you so much for being here, hanging out with us. And I can't scroll up far enough to see if any of the other mods are here, but I see the small scape is here. Thanks for that.
Really?
So
Lucky.
I can remember one of the first fish, and this is why I wanted to do this tonight. There were certain fish when I was a child that really stuck out to me, and we would go over to, I don't even know, I guess it was my mom's cousins, because they were our second cousins, and the guy had like 3 or 4 fish tanks in his basement, and one of them he eventually gave to us. It was a 20-gallon. Now this is, like the 70s, so it was a 20-gallon, and it had
Chock-full.
like this gold flake pattern for a background.
Oh,
It was old school.
groovy.
But in this particular tank, you'd walk into his basement. Now looking back at it, he did it the wrong way, kind of, because he had a bunch of gouramis. He had some blues, some opalines, some golds. They were all mixed together. And I wonder now, like, I don't remember as a kid being like, oh yeah, those things are fighting or something, but I wonder how long that combination worked in such a small tank with those particular gouramis. But yeah, it was just one of those things where I thought gouramis were one of the coolest fish. Those and angelfish,
They
with
are.
they're like always feeling around and stuff, and
Their
always
little
curious.
handies.
And so that was my first. I think that's the first time I could recall ever seeing gouramis. I was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. So this would have been the late 70s. And I've loved them ever since. And like I said at the beginning, since we've had fish tanks in this area, like big fish tanks, I'm not talking about when we first moved in, we just had to deal with the small 3-5 gallon ones that we could put upstairs. But once we got this area back up and running with larger tanks, we have had gouramis in our fish room nonstop ever since. So probably going on almost 20 years now. Gosh, that's hard to believe, but it's true. And the reason for that is there's lots of different types. They've got great personality. And I thought what we would do is talk a little bit about how not all gouramis are the same.
No.
We're not just talking about size, but we're talking about skill level and the care requirements of gouramis. I think most of them do have one thing in common, and that is, generally speaking, they don't like high flow. All right, so these are labyrinth. And the other thing they have in common, obviously, is the biology. They are labyrinth fish, which means that they have a special organ that allows them to go to the surface and bring in air from the surface, and then they just do their swimming around. Yes, they still have gills, but what that means is high flow, not the best for them. They need to have access to the water surface. So if you've got a tank that's just covered in duckweed or covered in red root floaters or some kind of plant like that, or maybe there's way too much hornwort or way too much guppy grass, and they're having a really hard time getting to the surface, that's not great for the gourami. The other thing I will say, and I'm curious how many of you have realized this as well. Whenever I have had a problem in an aquarium and there is a gourami in that aquarium, it is usually the first fish that will indicate to me there's an issue in the fish tank. And the way they do that is they just go to the bottom and sit there. They don't lay on their side. They're not really dramatic about it. But you'll usually, when you have a gourami and it just goes to the bottom of the tank and just kind of sits there and does nothing, that is like a telltale sign for me something's not right in this aquarium. Is there ammonia? Is there ick? Is there some type of bacterial infection? Is there a nitrite spike? But I have always seen that with my gouramis. They are one of those it's almost like the bird in a coal mine sort of thing, right? The gouramis are a really good indicator fish of the health of your aquarium. Now,
Bird in coal mine?
yeah, what are the canary in a coal mine? Canary in a coal mine.
What's that?
Are you for serious right now?
I'm for seriousing. Did they keep a canary to make sure that like levels were certain?
Yeah, to
Really?
make sure that there wasn't
So
what would be the gas? I don't know. I'm not a coal miner, but would that have been carbon monoxide? Would that have been natural gas? So, yeah, like methane. But they would use birds because they have such a high respiration rate that if something was bad, they'd go south real quick, and then that would tell you,
run.
better get out of here because we're not going to have a good time here much longer. So, you've already mentioned you have a favorite. Would you like to share your favorite gourami, please?
For the small scape, that's your hint. It's your hint.
Go ahead.
Sparkling gourami.
Yeah. And so, and by the way, we've done species profiles on a bunch of different gouramis. We've compared them. I did put some of those videos in the description below if you want more information. This was a 12-gallon long, I think you had with some sparkling gouramis. You could kind of see one back there a little bit. Yeah, the sparkling gourami is great because it is tiny.
Tiny.
Right, so they're going to max out at about an inch. I would say that they are pretty darn peaceful. Not all gouramis are peaceful. This is one that is, for the most part, especially compared to other gouramis, pretty peaceful. And unlike some, you can keep multiples in a tank, provided that your aquarium has got a little bit of space for them. Right? Sometimes the males might be a little bit rough on one another, not drastically so. They're not like cichlids or anything, but I would say if I was, like you had this in a 12-gallon long. The 12-gallon long was a 36-inch long tank, even though it was only 12 gallons. And so it was perfectly suited for gouramis. There wasn't a lot of flow. I think we just had a couple sponge filters here. There was plenty of access, although it doesn't look like it here in this video with the hornwort up there. But there was access to the top. They weren't being blown around. They're a great fish. I would say if there's a downside, do you have a downside to the sparkling gourami at all?
Well, they can be shy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's probably the number one thing. Sometimes it takes a little while for gouramis to show the sparkling gourami to show its true personality. But once it does, it's a glorious fish. When I did the sparkling gourami species profile, I mentioned this like last week or the week before, I was actually able to show them breeding. So that was pretty cool. So if you haven't checked out that video, the sparkling gourami, and again, I have it linked in the description. It's a pretty fun video. So you can see that sparkling gourami is right next to a lamp-eye rasbora. Again, you're looking at about an inch, maybe inch and a quarter, maybe slightly more, but a really chilled out fish, really inquisitive. But yeah, if you have a lot of sudden movements around a tank, if you've got a lot of action, you've got a lot of fish that have high activity levels, these fish might tend to hide a little bit more, but really awesome fish. If you've got at least could you put one in a 5-gallon? Yeah, they're not very active. Would I put a pair in a 5-gallon? I don't know. I'd probably prefer a 10-gallon, or maybe even like an 8-gallon cube. But you just got to keep an eye on it, make sure the male's not harassing the female too much. So that's the smallest of them all. I'm not going to go in order. because
No?
I want to deal with the polar opposite, because Whip already mentioned
I saw that.
the polar
Oof.
opposite. And
Whip, you can have them.
like a bonehead,
Oof.
I have a really cool video of the giant gourami, and
Do
about
you?
2 seconds before we went live, I'm like, oh, I should have put that in there. So
From the aquarium?
yeah, from that the Cleveland Aquarium.
Cleveland,
If
yeah.
you ever want to go to a really awesome public aquarium there's a lot of fresh water there. I mean, yeah, the salt water is
Anableps.
cool. Yeah, the salt water is cool, but I like going to public aquariums where there's a lot of fresh water. The Cleveland Aquarium is absolutely on the top of that list. And that's the giant gourami. This is as the name implies, a massive fish with a big attitude. One of the guys that I know from the GCCA has had a couple of giant gouramis in the past, Tim.
Really? Tim?
And he was
Oh.
mentioning how his giant gourami was eating some of his there was African cichlids. I think it was, no. Was it South Americans? Like something I was really surprised
Oscars?
by. No, yeah, Oscars. But the giant gourami, I don't want to misquote, but it was something strange. Like, oh my gosh, the giant gourami was eating imbuna, or the giant gourami was eating like firemouth cichlids. It was something like, well, that's surprising.
Shocking.
In a sense that, yeah, they're big enough to do that. Giant gouramis get huge, like well over 18 inches, real tall bodied. This is actually, the picture I'm showing you is a really pretty giant gourami relative to others. Usually their face is a lot more gnarly. Like this one is not full grown because, or maybe it's a female. I don't know. I'm not an expert in giant gouramis, but usually their heads they've got a lot more fat deposits on their head. Their lips are a lot bigger. And trust me when I tell you, these things grow up to be not the most beautiful fish in the world. A lot of times when you see them when they're small, they have a really pretty like pink color. They start to get more of this tannish gray. At least all the ones I've seen that are larger are pretty much looking like this. Tank size, oh man, for a single one, for just one giant gourami, I think I'd want at least a 240, maybe a 300 gallon, because they just get so huge. Not a
Yeah.
super active fish, but
Big.
and they will eat anything that can fit into their mouth. So
Including you.
including you. No, that's not true. But yeah, Whip says the face only a mother could love. Whip, I'm curious because
Pretty
you are
much.
more of actually a monster fish guy than I am.
You are.
What do you think is the minimum tank size for a giant gourami? Like realistically, a full grown one? Because if it's me, I want at least a tank that is 8 feet long and at least 24 inches wide by probably 30 inches tall. And that's getting you into that 240 to 280 range minimally, I would think. Ted says 300 gallon. Yeah, probably. Yeah, because a 300 gallon would get you 8 feet by 30 inches by 24. Yeah, that'd be a 300 gallon. So, yeah, for sure. So that's the biggest. Most people cannot keep these, and don't be fooled. I guess that's the point of this. Don't be fooled by seeing small giant gouramis and hearing somebody say, this fish will only grow to the size of your aquarium. You can stunt their growth by putting them in a smaller aquarium, but they're still going to way, way, way outgrow most aquariums. So that's one best left to the monster fish keepers, if you know what I mean.
Well, second floor thinks a 20 long would also work. I agree.
For like a little tiny firstborn
Yeah,
little
For the
little
first few
fry.
years, it should be fine.
Yeah, right. For the first week, a little fry guy, like,
I
hey,
wonder.
man, that's 20 long,
They're
great.
they're probably born at like this big.
No, they're not quite that big. All right, so that's the smallest and the largest. Dave, thank you so much for the super chat. Hide your cats, hide your dogs, hide your fish.
Right.
Your honey gourami's coming for you, man. It's coming for you. Oh, I just got rid of us. But anyway, the next one that I want to talk about, and this is a really cool one, and I know that you've mentioned it. This picture here this video is actually a combination of two different types of gouramis. There are honey gouramis in here, which is the one I want to address. There's also a bunch of thick lip gouramis, which are very similar looking to honey gouramis. They just get a little bit bigger, a little bit more attitude. But this is another one. I absolutely love the honey gourami. They
my
come in
second
two
fave.
varieties, red and yellow. There are some redwoods in here. Like I said, there's a lot, probably more thick lips in here than there are honeys. I feel bad because when I did the species profile, I didn't make that clear in that video. And then people are like, there's thick lips in there. I'm like, yeah, I know. I didn't mention that the way I should have. I'm sorry. But the honey gourami is another great fish. Another one that you can keep in groups, right? So if you're looking to keep more than one, now I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't keep them in groups and maybe anything less than a 20, but I have mixed, one of the coolest tanks I've had is when I mixed the yellow honeys with the ember tetras, and then you could put some orange honey gouramis or red honey gouramis in there as well. Just a really nice docile fish, not as shy as the sparkling gouramis, but there's a chance you could still have a somewhat shy honey gourami. They're not generally going to pick on other fish. Now, all fish can lose their minds and do dumb stuff, but for gouramis, I think we've probably covered two of the most peaceful, two of the easiest to keep, and that's the sparkling gourami, which because it's so tiny and relatively unaggressive, and then the honey gourami. Again, a little bit larger, a little bit taller bodied. Honey gourami, maybe you're gonna get a couple inches out of that fish. Thick lips like you're seeing here, that might grow to be a 3.5 inch fish, a little bit more assertive, but both of those are pretty cool. Honey gourami, I would say, is definitely one. Would that be your second favorite?
Absolutely.
Now, what do you like better? Do you like the red or the yellow?
Yellow.
Really?
Because they're like little rays of sunshine.
That's, yeah, I suppose that would be true.
And I like to combine them with embers. And the embers are orange, so you get yellow and orange. It's just a happy tank.
It is a cool fish because for these gouramis, a lot of times they can serve as the centerpiece of your aquarium. And when I say that, what I mean is a single fish that is going to have a great personality where it's not a schooling fish. You know, you've got your tetras, your rasbors, that kind of thing. And then you've got this centerpiece that's kind of like your personality fish. And gouramis can really have a nice personality, even some of the more assertive ones.
Yeah.
Now, moving up from there, this is one that I think is often, and we did a video on this, honey gourami versus the dwarf gourami. Dwarf gouramis are really cool, but there's a few problems that you need to be aware of with the dwarf gourami. One, they are considerably more aggressive than the sparkling and honey gouramis. I would only generally keep one dwarf gourami in an aquarium, and I've actually tried to keep multiple dwarf gouramis in a 75, and it worked for a short period of time, and then it didn't. So the dwarf gourami is a cool fish. There's lots of different varieties, and I'll show you a few as we kind of go through this little video here, but be careful here. This is one where I'm kind of backing off. I'm just probably keeping one. Know that they're going to be a little bit more assertive. So maybe it's not the best idea to keep them with long fin fish. Maybe it's not the best idea to keep them in small tanks. I recommend for a dwarf a minimum of a 20-gallon. Larger is always better. A lot of people ask, and I mentioned this when we were talking about guppies last week. People always ask, hey, I need a fish that will take care of some guppy fry. This is one that I often recommend, provided that you got to keep an eye on it and make sure that it's not going to start bullying the adult guppies. But usually these guys will definitely consume some little baby fries from guppies or endlers, that kind of thing. But nice fish. The other thing to worry about, or not worry about, but just be aware of, is disease that they carry. So dwarf gourami disease, it's a thing. I'm curious how many of you, feel free to share in the chat, have had dwarf gouramis that look great from the pet store, and within a month to 6 weeks, they're like, well, that one's gone. Get another one. Oh, that one's gone. A lot of times these guys suffer from dwarf gourami disease. They can also suffer from bloat, which I've seen numerous times. So just be a little bit careful there. They're really pretty fish. And so if you can get a healthy one and you've got them in the right environment, they don't get super big, right? They're not going to be a super huge fish. They're going to usually be max out right around 2.5, 3 inches. Thicker than the honey gouramis, to be sure, a little bit longer. Colors, like I said, colors are outstanding. But just be aware that they are a little bit more aggressive. They're not going to tolerate one another quite as well. And of course, as I'm showing you these pictures, the temptation is to try to mix all the different colors together. And that's where we start to get into trouble. So just be careful there. James, Nature Aquatics, what's up? Glad you're hanging out with us today.
Hey, James.
So thank you for that. Now, this next one it was one of the early videos I did on the subject. And I did it more as a warning than anything else, because that's these guys. This video quality is going to be horrible. I'm sorry, it was like one of my early videos. This is an opaline gourami. The opalines, the blue gouramis, and the golds, I include those all as basically one type of fish because they all have very similar personality, and that is very assertive. They're going to max out probably around 4.5 to 5 inches. This is not a peaceful fish, generally speaking. I had it in this 150 forever. This fish, I had a blue one before that, so I went gold, then blue, then opaline. I used to just switch them out and rotate them. And those fish were in that 150 with cichlids, and I mean big ones, some Lethrinops intermedius, some red empress. And I don't know what it was about these gouramis, but they would, as soon as the lights would come on, they would chase those very large cichlids around relentlessly. Like, it was crazy. And they would actually, in some points, dominate this 150-gallon tank. This fish right here probably was, even though you see the Geophagus there, you've got the Severum there, and you can see him swimming right in the middle. And you can always tell when a fish has got that dominant personality, it is going to be out there. It's just going to be out there in the middle of the tank. It's not afraid of anything. It's not kind of next to a structure. It's just out there. And so be really careful with the opalines, the blues, and the golds, because they can be a fairly aggressive fish. I don't like keeping them in anything less than a 4-foot tank, and I usually keep them with fish like this. So Severums, Geos, other South American cichlids. I kept them with African cichlids. It actually worked out just fine. I mean, in the end, they kind of figured stuff out. This would be a fish where maybe if I've got a rainbow shark, a red-tailed shark, there's a strong possibility that works out. Tiger barbs, Buenos Aires tetras. So these more assertive fish, these are the ones. If you've got guppies, if you've got platies, might not be the best fish, and especially, like I keep saying, bigger tanks. Did you have a favorite out of 3? And by the way, we always name our gouramis Gary. So if I ever slip up and just say, oh, there was Gary, just know that the blues, the golds, and the opalines, we had Gary 1, Gary 2, Gary 3, Gary 4. The pearl gourami, let's just get into that, right? The pearl gourami, great fish. Might be, for me, it's my personal favorite.
Really?
This was a 55-gallon. Pearl gouramis, big. They can max out easily 5, maybe 6 inches. I had 2 varieties in this tank. I had the standards and I had the gold pearl gouramis, and I loved them both. They were like 15 in this 15 in this 55-gallon. Absolutely loved this tank, and they were pretty big. Left each other alone. Males tend to show a little bit more of that iridescence than females. Get that red. You see that red underneath their bodies there? Those are males. But oh my gosh, you're talking about a fish that was truly, it is magnificent. And right now, of this group, we still have about 5 of them in that bottom 125. And don't judge me, bro. They're in there with some random old peacock cichlids like dragon bloods and stuff, some rainbow cichlids. There is a gigantic Vieja Argentia in that tank. What else is in there? It's a catch-all tank. Brachardi, right now, it's a tank where it's like we don't have any space for these fish. They're all getting along, believe it or not, just fine. And the pearls are in there just kind of minding their own business. And yeah, I think it's the only gourami we have currently in the fish room right now are the pearls that are in that bottom 125. Definitely want at least a 4-foot tank for these guys. These are big. These are big fish, but great. I mean, you're talking about, when it comes to gouramis, one of the better centerpiece types of fish for a gourami. I mean, they are absolutely outstanding. Not very aggressive, generally just ignore other fish. For the most part, tolerate one another very well. I know some people are like, hey, man, sometimes they get a little bit aggressive, but I generally haven't found that. We've kept pearl gouramis in our fish room for many, many years. And anything from a 55-gallon up to a 125, and it's been an awesome fish. There are lots of other types. Yes?
But Whip has a good warning. You got to watch, too. If your lid isn't tight, they can be so aggressive that they'll climb out of the tank at night and assault you while you sleep.
The blues, the golds, and the opalines? You never know. I mean, those fish, they got the little hands to do it, like pow, 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 pow.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say out of this list, these are my favorite.
Yeah.
As long as you got a 4-foot, I mean, you could put one in a 40 breeder, or maybe even a group of in a 40 breeder, I suppose. But I like a 4-foot tank just to give them a little space. They're not active, right? None of the gouramis are going to be flying around your tank super active. And again, you can see here with this 55-gallon, lower flow, access to the top. Almost all of the gouramis are very aggressive eaters, so you're not going to have any problems. I like feeding the sparkling gouramis some live baby brine. They really love that. But the rest of them, I don't think they ever turn down a single type of food that I've put in the tank.
Good for them. They're
just like, boom, it's time to eat. Water parameters for pretty much all of them, anywhere from mid-6s up to a pH of 8, even a little higher. Like I said, we're at 8 to 8.2. Water hardness for all of them, you can go single digits, 3-4 degrees. We keep them at 10. You can go a little bit higher than that. So they're really easy fish to keep temperature wise. Again, most of them we keep in the upper 70s, so 78 to 80. So that seems to be a sweet spot in terms of where we've kept them, where they live a really long time. And trust me when I tell you, especially the blues, the olds, the opalines, the pearls, the thick lips, these fish will live a long time. Like when we have both of our blue Garys and our gold Gary, easily 5, 6, 7 years out of those fish. The pearls that we have in the 125 right now have probably going on 4 or 5 years, have moved tanks like 3 or 4 times. So you can get a lot. And yeah, there are tons of other types of gouramis. And I see here, you talk about the chocolate gouramis. Chocolate gouramis for us, I
love
like
those.
them.
And the licorice ones
And
too.
the licorice gouramis are cool. Yep. The chocolates for me have always been a little bit more problematic to keep. And that's not true for everybody. For me, they've always been more prone to ick. Those ones in particular, I like to bring, ideally, I think it's better to bring the pH down. They do pretty well in black water aquariums, so that's definitely something to consider. But I don't think the chocolates for me ever did well, because in that particular case, my pH was a little bit too high. My water hardness was a little bit too high. And I think if my pH and water hardness were a little bit lower, the chocolates would have done better. Same thing with the samurais. So samurai gouramis, I never had good luck with those either, because I needed, I think, lower pH. The other one that's really cool, I don't have a picture of it, is the moonlight gourami. It's just basically a gourami that is like a really shiny silver. Pretty chilled out fish. That's a bigger one. So that's one where it's, you're gonna have a fish that's 5 inches or so, about the same as a pearl gourami. That's a great question, Anthony. Whatever happened to the kissing gouramis? They're still out there. The problem with the kissing gouramis is they are actually pretty decently aggressive fish. That kissing that they're actually doing is not like, oh, hey, honey, I love you. It's more of a standoff between those fish, and they will try to kiss other fish. And so it was one of those things back in the 70s and 80s, kissing gouramis were everywhere. They're a pink fish. They get pretty large. But then people started having the same issues. They're aggressive, and they're picking on other fish and chasing them relentlessly. And so, yeah, they just kind of went away. I don't really see them anymore. Gosh, you know what? It's funny because I don't see them at the pet stores that much. And it just occurred to me as we're talking about it, I really don't see them on the import list. I don't see them on the wholesale list as much anymore. I mean, they're out there, but I think what winds up happening is people buy them at pet stores, they get them home, and then they're returning them after 4 to 6 weeks. Being like, this fish is, chasing all my other fish around. The pet store's like, I don't want to deal with this all the time. So I think that's what happened.
Fish room fever.
Room, what's up?
What?
How many gourami can I add to a 10-gallon Oscar tank? Leave it to James. What's going on, man? It's been a while. We've missed you at the Aquashellas. They absolutely haven't been the same since you and Ed have not been there as much.
Not
Are
the
you
same.
going to Daytona? I'm curious, James. Are you going to be there? Because we
That
need
would
to
be so cool.
we need to get the band back together for our late night conversations about random things. So that would be cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, again, I didn't cover all the gouramis. I'm leaving out a whole mess load of them. You've got, people mentioned the chocolate, the kissing, the samurai, the
Rodney says, what about the pikehead gourami?
I don't know the pikehead gourami. I've
Ever
never
heard of them? They are hard to keep and look like a pike.
I have not heard of them, so I would not be able to speak about such a fish. Yep. Fisher says, yeah, remember the kissing gouramis in my dad's tank when I was a kid? Yeah, I had them when I was a kid too, and I think I only ever had one. I don't think I ever got 2 of them. So I probably avoided those issues, and I don't recall as a kid like them being overly aggressive, but I'm sure it was one of those things where I wasn't paying attention. It was probably
not.
eating endlers and stuff like that. Frida, thank you so much for becoming a prime timer. Or Freda, really appreciate it. Glad you're here. Dave M, appreciate the super chat. I already read that one about the hide your cats, but thank you once again. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here before we continue on. Finsanity's been a prime timer for 19 months.
Wow.
I have to ask, what's with the folks from Chicago calling it Chicagoland? I've been dying to ask. Chicagoland? I have no idea. It's just, yeah, that
That's
is
what it's
weird.
called.
You don't hear it
Chicagoland.
like Phoenix Land or New York Land.
Yeah, you're right.
Or the Indianapolis Land area. That'd be a mouthful. That insanity, that's not cool, man. That's not cool at all. I've lived here all my life, and I've never even pondered that.
That's very interesting. I don't know.
Chicagoland. We do call it that.  We call it that, and it's just what we call it. Chicagoland, just so you know, is Chicago plus all the suburbs. I guess that's probably why, because when you think of Chicago, like the city itself, yeah, there's millions of people there, but when you look at the area surrounding Chicago, there's actually a lot more people. So all the suburbs on the north and the east and the west. So that's all Chicagoland area, but wow, I don't know like where that comes from.
That'd be funny. Dallas land.
And Lynn, it's because downstate thinks it's another state. Yeah, you know what? That's the funny thing about Illinois, and I say this all the time. Illinois is split up basically into mostly two regions. You've got Chicagoland, which is basically just Chicago by Lake Michigan and the surrounding suburbs, and then the entire rest of the state, west of certainly Route 47 or I-39, and definitely south of I-80, is much more rural farmland, and very much not like the suburbs. And when we ride our motorcycles, we are always heading either west or south, because driving around in the suburbs of Chicago is a nightmare. So it's true. Here's a good one. Don says, hello, any suggestions on how to bag endlers for a fish swap? Do I bag pairs or trios? Any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. I would do trios. I would do either trios, or actually I might even do a male and 3 females. So and people do pairs, so there's nothing wrong with doing pairs. I just think probably most people are going to be used to seeing trios, because what you don't want is for a male to relentlessly chase a female around to the point where she gets exhausted, and then you wind up with a dead female. So a trio is probably the safest way to go. Cody says, driving in downtown Chicago takes forever. Yeah, pretty much. And so do a lot of the suburbs nowadays, too. So it's not the funnest thing in the world. All right. If you got your questions, bring them. Bring them. And I'm looking here through the chat. But if you got them, now's the time to ask. And I will try my hardest to... Michelle says, we've got the croaking gourami. They stay small. Yep. I'd say the croaking gourami, the characteristics, pretty much everything I said about the sparkling gourami is true.
Except croaking, don't they get a little bit bigger?
Not much. Not enough to be noteworthy, I don't think.
No.
No.
I've never had croaking.
Well, that's
but I think they're both supposedly supposed to croak. Do the croaking sound?
I don't know if I've ever heard it.
My sparklers never croaked.
Of course, in our fish room area with the sponge filters and all the bubbles and stuff, that would be a little bit harder to hear anyway.
Perhaps,
Air Warrior says, my pearl gouramis love betta pellets, which makes sense since they are both, they both are labyrinth fish. So that is true. Yeah, like I said, man, the gouramis, I haven't run across a gourami that's hard to feed. James says, I'll see you in Daytona. Love it.
That's
Glad you're going to be there.
Cool. Oh, James.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Nature Aquatics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah,
there's
that's his home
Jameses
state.
Here. Yeah, there's a couple Jameses here today.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to switch back and forth and back and forth. And yeah, that's right.
Yeah, cool. Looking forward to it. That's awesome. Wei Ming, thank you so much for becoming a prime timer. Really appreciate it. Glad you're here hanging with us. All right, let me see here.
Oh, and James, I think, was saying that he's got a gold that's like 5 years old.
A gold gourami?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Those gold. I would say, in terms of hardiness, the blues, the golds, and the opalines to me are the most hardy. Like, at least for us, we've had the best luck. They live the longest. They are the most robust. They live the longest without starting to turn like gnarly. Because some gouramis, especially as they get older, they'll start to be like, and get the spine curvatures and all that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, their little feelers are all kind of bent up and everything.
Poor kids.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a sad thing. Oh, good question, Ken. 40-gallon breeder gourami ideas. That's a great question. So it depends on what you're looking for. You could do, so if you start small, you do the sparkling gourami. You could throw probably throw a dozen sparkling gouramis in a 40 breeder if it's well planted, got a lot of structure. That would be cool. I wouldn't hesitate to throw a dozen honey gouramis in a 40 breeder. I think if you're going to do the blues, the opalines, the golds, the dwarf gouramis, one. Definitely just one. Pearls, I think you could throw 4 or 5 in there without too many problems. What else? Yeah, Is there any other ones? The thick lips, I'd probably just throw one in there just to be safe. I don't have enough experience with the chocolates or the samurais because, like I said, they don't do well in our water. So when I've tried them, they generally don't live long. Maybe 8 to 10 giant gouramis. No, I'm kidding. No giant gouramis, unless you enjoy seeing fish that are like only partially submerged in water. But those are all certainly options. And part of it depends on the other types of fish that you're going to keep as well. So if you've got a blue, a gold, or an opaline gourami and a 40, then you're going to want fish that are a little bit more assertive. That's most of your barbs, most of your medium to larger size tetras, which that could be a little tricky in and of itself in a tank that size to get a large enough school so they don't wipe each other out. Safe-wise, I would stay with the more mellow ones. The sparkling or the croaking gourami is fine. Honey gouramis, pearl gouramis. Oh, that's cool. James says, I used to breed the opalines and the golds. Love them. And to be clear, I have seen larger aquariums, and maybe some of you have seen this as well, like 125s, like some of the 6-foot tanks where people will basically almost treat a blue, gold, opaline gourami tank like a cichlid tank, overstock it, tons of plants, and it seems to work out well for a long period of time. But most people don't generally want to do that, and I think you're still kind of taking a chance. Kind of like when you do the betta sororities. Sometimes even with the larger tanks in a big group, it doesn't always work.
Now I wonder if anybody would ask this question. Would you, now I know you said don't mix the gourami, but would you ever mix honeys with sparkling?
Maybe, probably, but I would want maybe a 29 gallon, 29 gallon, 40 breeder, something like that, or maybe like a bookshelf tank. I mean, long tank like that, 12 long might have worked out just fine, because again, you just never know 100% even if they're different body shapes, different colors, different sizes. Every once in a while, gouramis will just be like, hey man, you're a gourami, I'm a gourami, but I'm going to be the boss. So the nice thing about the honeys, if you keep them all as one type, it's a little bit easier. I would absolutely not mix the blues, golds, opalines, dwarfs, the ones that are really better off singly. Shelley says, how many people can clean the back glass of the aquarium? That's a really good question. Anybody here do that? Clean the back glass of the aquarium? So I would do that if the backs of our tanks didn't have a background, because then especially if it's up against a wall and that wall is like painted white or some lighter color, like these tanks behind me here. If I didn't have these backgrounds all black, or like the one by my head over here, it's got a 3D background, I would absolutely scrape the back glass, because then you'd see the algae. But because all of our tanks either are painted black or they have some type of a 3D background, I never do, because it's really, the algae is not that obvious. So I don't worry about it. Plus, it's really kind of a pain because you got to move stuff around. You got to move plants maybe, and rocks and wood. Obviously, this low boy right behind us, there's no back to it. It's visible on all 4 sides, and so you have to keep all 4 sides of the glass algae free for it to look nice.
Yeah, but if you got like my 5 gallons, definitely want to clean the back, especially if you had like how I use the parchment paper on the back.
Yeah.
Have to clean the back, otherwise.
Good point. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Well, we had some frozenness going on here for a minute. Is our
Really?
frozenness better? There were some buffering issues, and second floor said it, and so did Emma, and they're in very different areas of the world. So I'm assuming that might have been us for a moment. I am sorry for the minor technical difficulty here, but yeah. Ted says, I saw the Geophagus dicrososter on your pre-order. Can you give the 411 on these fish? Yeah, so Geophagus dicrososter, like I said, they're on the website. Really, really, really pretty fish. And so it's a typical Geophagus in the sense that it's going to get all that spangling. It's going to get to around 8 inches. So it's a larger South American cichlid that is also going to have the same general, mostly peaceful demeanor of other Geophagus. The reason why I really like them is, 1, they're not super common, and 2, if you've got a Geophagus tank already and you're looking for something that's got that same personality, same generally peaceful cichlid, but is different, the Geophagus dicrososter is for you, because it's got, instead of having like most Geophagus have like a silver kind of iridescence to them, this one has more of a gold, and it is a noticeable difference. I actually have video of Geophagus dicrososter at around, I want to say 4 inches or so. They were in a 125 125. Did I put them in 125? And I think I had them in the 75 that used to be over here by like the top 75 before that became the rainbow. Oh, it was with the rainbows. And you can see that gold appearing. It's really striking. So I absolutely love that. What I'm probably going to do is in the Geophagus tank that's behind Joanna's head over here, I might keep one or two back just so I can really mix it up because they do stand out. They definitely stand out compared to other geos.
Frida asks, can you add the blue-eyed red rainbow fish with black neons and guppies?
100%. Yep. That'd be a cool mix because the black neons are pretty chill. The blue-eye reds have some decent activity to them, so they're going to keep up with the guppies just fine. They're not going to get out-competed for food. They're not aggressive. They're not so small where you got to worry about somebody eating them. So that would be a really cool mix for sure. Rebecca says 120 gallon with roseline and gold. With roseline and gold and Odessa barbs. Any Gouramis to go with that group? 100%. Yeah, you've got 120 gallon. Everything but the giant Gourami, really. I mean, maybe your sparkling Gouramis would be a little bit intimidated by the activity of the rose lines, and the barbs are pretty fast moving. That's a perfect tank for if you wanted to do a group of pearl Gouramis, absolutely possible. If you wanted to do a group of honey Gouramis, totally possible. If you wanted to do a single dwarf opaline, blue or gold, absolutely would get along just fine in a tank like that. So you've got a lot of options. Maybe stay away from the sparkling because I think they would just get too scared. And obviously the giant Gourami's too big. But yeah, a group of pearls would certainly work. Group of honeys would also work just fine. That'd be pretty cool.
All right, James wants to know if the following fish would eat cucumber. You ready? Okay. South American cichlids, bleeding heart tetras, spotted hopless catfish, and the orange tiger pleco.
Well, orange tiger pleco. Which ones would eat cucumbers?
Yeah.
I've already forgotten the list.
Good job.
Thank you.
South American cichlids.
Quite possibly, especially if they're hungry.
Bleeding heart tetras.
I've never tried to feed them any vegetables before, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Spotted catfish. Hopless.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
And then the orange tiger pleco.
For some reason, I think the orange tiger would be the only one where I'd be like, this thing's probably not going to eat this.
Really?
Yeah. You'd want more meaty foods.
Plecos, I thought plecos eat vegetables.
Not all.
No?
Well, I mean, some do. Yeah, most of them do. But for some reason, that one is just striking me as the one that
is the difficult one.
Yeah. I don't know why. Mr.
Wants
Fish,
steak.
Thank you very much for the super chat. What's your most mysterious fish disappearance? Oh, my gosh. We have them.
Oh, my gosh. Remember some of my bettas? Disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
Disappeared. They didn't jump. They weren't in the tank.
Yeah.
Nobody was there to eat them. It was, they just.
And I did a video on that.
Zapped up.
Why fish hide and why they disappear. Most of the time, like for us, it doesn't even faze me when I don't see fish anymore because almost all of our tanks have scavenger fish, whether they're bristlenose plecos, some type of a loach, some type of a catfish. And believe me, they can consume fish very quickly. And I really notice it if we bring fish in, let's say I bring in 300 of some kind of a rasbora, but I know there's a bristlenose pleco in there. If I lose, you're always going to lose some, but what if I lose 20 or 25 in the course of the first week? I never find a single one. So a lot of times when people are looking for a fish that's missing, if you've got, and that doesn't have to be a scavenger fish. I mean, other fish will just be like, oh, there's some fresh meat right there, and let's go ahead and take care of business. But and I know, and I thought it was Father Fish who said that he doesn't even remove his dead fish. He just buries them in the substrate. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Unless the fish is large, and I know I don't have other scavenger fish in the tank, or obviously it's diseased or something like that, but if it just died of old age, sometimes I just leave it there and it'll be gone by the morning. So it's food. And as long as I know it wasn't a disease or it's not going to foul up the water, other fish will eat them pretty darn quick. So, but yeah, mysterious fish, we have fish that just go missing. And like I said, most of the time it's just other scavenger fish being like, oh, that thing died by. I'll go ahead and have my lunch now. Thank you. I'm trying to think if there's any that were like, where did it go? I mean, besides your bettas that just went missing for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the biggest mystery to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the betta mystery was the mystery of them, the biggest mystery of them all.
Was-
What the heck? What's up, Joey? How's it going, man? Glad to see you're all healed up. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Team Primetime, dropping in to say hello. I hope all is well and wish to see you soon. Also, Giant Gourami. Yep. RTG, red. What is the RTG? Red tail Gourami? And the pearls are my favorite. Yeah, and you would know too for sure because you've had giant gouramis. What do you think? Smallest tank that you would recommend? We kind of had consensus here, roughly a 300 gallon. That was, and I said 8 feet by at least 2 feet by 30 inches tall, which is pretty much a 300. But would love to hear because you're the monster fish keeper in the house over here. But thank you for dropping by, and it's nice to see. You know, you didn't really take any beatings over there in your boxing match, so you didn't really have a ton of healing to do, but that's also good to hear. It wasn't like a situation where, you know, you look like when somebody looked like Rocky Balboa or something after a fight.
Yeah.
You should have done that. That would have been really funny. Afterwards, Adrian! Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, your wife might have been mad because you would have been calling some other woman's name, but, you know.
Everybody would have gotten the reference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity. I think that's reason enough to do it again. Yeah, just so you can scream somebody's name. But thanks for being here.
Yeah, is
All
that
right.
the red tail Gourami?
Is it? Did you look it up?
I'm going to be looking at,
RTG.
they get,
Yeah.
yes, red tail Gourami.
Okay.
I'd say 500 gallons of dilution.
Wow. Okay. See, that's a new one for me. The red tail gourami.
I got to look it up. I got to see what it looks like.
You look it
It
up.
sounds cool.
You look it up. Dave M, what's going on, man? How many multis would you put up on the website for the swap? Did someone grab them all? Are you running low? Still waiting on that? Yeah, so I put 10 on the website and they were bought up pretty quick, and I am starting to run very low. The thing is I'm still debating what I want to do with that tank. And so I thought about putting more, and then I'm like, you know, I don't know if I love that fish. And there's a part of me that's like, hey, you know what? Let's just switch some things up. Let me go ahead and put in something different in that tank, switch it up a little bit. And then it got to the point where I'm like, all right, well, then I'll just start scooping these bad boys out. And I stopped myself. I couldn't do it. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of fish in there. There's still a lot of fry in there. So I don't know. I'll probably put another 10 on the website maybe next month. But yeah, right now that group is getting low, especially because at Aquashella I sold way more than I should have. I think I brought in like 40 or 50, and I probably kind of overdid it there, just kind of clearing out that tank a little bit. Whip's cuter, at least. Better hair for sure.
Yeah, but Whip says, I've been demoted. Bring in a guy with a 2,000 gallon, and all of a sudden, he's the monster fish guy.
Don't worry, Whip. You're still a monster fish guy, too.
You're still our
Yeah.
monster fish guy.
And you're just a monster guy. I mean that in the lovingest sort of way.
That's right. Oh, the red tail Gourami is the red tail giant Gourami.
Oh, okay.
So he's a big guy.
He's the big guy. Yep, for sure. All right, hold on. I saw. Hold on a second here. I got to scroll up because I lost all my stuff. Adrian says, will we see those Geophagus at GCCI? I can't make it to the green water. Yeah, for sure. So I will have the Dicrososter on the website in a week or so. So right now, everything that's on the website is for green water. Once green water happens on Saturday, I'll update all the inventories, and then early next week, I'll have the GCCA inventory up there, and I am 99% sure we will have more of those Geophagus Dicrososter on the website for GCCA and most likely for quad as well, because I got a decent number of them just because, again, they're pretty, I wouldn't necessarily say they're super rare, but they are definitely less common than a lot of the geos, you know, especially like the Suramensis group. We've got the Wine Millerai, the Megasema, Altafrons. Those are somewhat common. Tapajos are somewhat common, but these Dicrososter are a little bit less so. Joey says, I need to buy fish from Jason. He seems to have the best fish that no one else really has. I don't know about that, but I do scour the lists for at least, I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to bring in 20 different types of fish, I want like 20 to 25% of those fish to be stuff that people haven't seen or haven't seen in a long time. Like the one I'm surprised that no one's commented on is the threadfin gobies. The threadfin gobies that we have in-house are really, really cool fish. If you want to see this, again, go on primetimeaquatics.com and check them out. That picture is a really fired up male, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what they can look like, and they're almost full size now, and they're super interesting.
Chattanooga Ed's in the house
My
too.
gosh, we got the whole crew
What?
between Joey, Chattanooga Ed, James. Man, this is really making me want to relive.
Too bad
like-
we don't have your honey here.
Yeah, we got to relive the aquashellas of old.
I
The
know.
old time, the old night cruise. Yep, good stuff. Adrian said, quick question, can you keep smaller geos like redhead top hosts with larger ones? Yeah, in fact, we're doing that in this tank right here behind Joanna's head. I've got a Geophagus top host in there with Altifrons, with Megasema. So they generally get along just fine. They're a little smaller, but for the most part, yeah, they're going to get along just fine. All right. Joy says, yeah, spoke at the GCCA. That was a number of years ago. I remember being there. You don't remember it but we did talk. That was actually, at that point, I had my YouTube channel. I was at 20 subscribers because Kasha from Creative, no, I was at 19, and Kasha from Creative Pet Keeping was my number 20th subscriber. I remember that. I was there hanging out. That was 2017. That was, what was that, January or February 2017? It had to be.
That would have
Might
had
have
to
been
have been March.
No, March. Yeah, sorry, March.
Yeah.
Yep. True. All right, let me see. Adrian says, yeah, the threadfin gobies caught my eye. I've got 3 different kinds. Yeah, those threadfins are definitely cool fish. Really interesting. They're very sticky. And I mean that in an interesting way, not like a bad way, but they're this type of fish where I got like, I don't even know, 50 or 60 of them. And as I normally do, I got this big giant bag, and I go to pour them into a net, into a bucket, so like the water kind of fills itself up. They go into a net, and I pour these bad boys out. Like 2 of them come out, and the other 48 or 68 or however many I had are stuck in the plastic bag with no water. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So I had to pour the bucket back into the bag, kind of swish them around. Then I just had to take to picking them out by hand, like one at a time. And then I've got this goby. And I'm putting it in the tank, right? So you've got a goby in your hand, and it's about that big, and I'm putting it in the tank, and it's just stuck to my hand. And I'm like, get off of my hand. And finally it's like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
I'm out of water.
I'm going to go stick to that glass over there. I'm like, anything. Just get off my hand, dude. I got more of these to catch now because you guys can't just pour out of a bag like a normal fish. But very interesting. Ooh. Yeah.
Oh,
say something.
yeah, Rodney. Did you keep snakeskin gourami, and what size tank for them, and water parameters? Have you ever had snakeskin gourami?
Once.
Yeah.
I think when we had them, they were in a 20-gallon. But that was another one, from what I can remember, where they didn't live long, and I think that was another one like the Samurai, where it was like, you know what, I think they would have been much better off in black water with a pH that was certainly sub 7 with a GH and KH in the mid single digits, because they just didn't do well in our water parameters. Andrew says, any issues keeping shrimp with sparkling gouramis? That's a great question. Shrimplets will most likely go missing, but if you've got a big breeding group of shrimp and not that many sparkling gouramis, I doubt they're going to put a huge dent in the populations. But if I was like, hey, I just got this group of half a dozen shrimp and I've got a half a dozen sparkling gouramis and they're in a 20, I don't know if I would expect to see a ton of shrimplets. Dave says, you guys going to OCA? Unfortunately, no. And it's mostly because Aquashella is the first weekend in November. The OCA and Aquashella traditionally have always kind of butted up right against each other, where it's like a week or so apart. And then we just don't have enough time to kind of like come back, recuperate, and then be back gone again because OCA is, by the way, OCA is a great event. So for those of you like, I can't make it to Aquashella in Daytona, it's too far, or the timing's not right. Especially if you're in the Midwest, the OCA, the Ohio Cichlid Association Extravaganza, is in Strongsville, Ohio. It's a really fun event. I mean, it's a club event, but they have very solid speakers every single year for the 2 or 3 days. That's what I started to say. It's a longer event. I believe it might start on Thursday, like Thursday night, and goes Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday is a massive fish auction. I mean, it's huge. And people are selling fish out of their hotel rooms. It is, if you've never been there and you can get a chance to go, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And you're very close to the Christmas Story House. Just throwing that out there.
And yeah, so Christmas Story
And
House.
then
And
the
there's
fish
a ton
store.
Yeah, there's a ton of fish stores out there that are, there is a big fish community out there.
What's the fish store that we like there?
Oh
Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank.
Yeah, it'll come to me in a second. It'll definitely come to me in a second. Biggie says, are there any big events West Coast? You know what's so weird is all the people that live in the West Coast, and there really aren't that many big fish. All right, so there was one. I wish Sam Scales was here. He'd be able to, and maybe some of you know. There was an event that just happened in Southern California. It's usually a reptile event, but they brought in a fair amount of fish vendors, and I'm telling you that I saw Sam. He had time-lapse video, and he said there were 40,000 people there, and I would believe it just based on the video that I saw. It was a massive event in Southern California. It's mostly reptiles, and now for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. It's supposedly happening again next year. It was right before Aquashella Chicago, so it would have been in July. But that's one definitely to check out because they're really starting to add fish.
Aquatics.
Aquatics, thank you. Yeah, that's a really nice fish. There's a bunch of them out there. I mean, OCA does a fish store hop, and I want to, was that on, I can't remember if that was Thursday or Friday, where you just leave early in the morning and you hit like 4 or 5 local fish stores. And I've done a ton of fish store videos in that general area, and it's a lot of fun. It really is. Is OCA, OCA's Ohio Cichlid Association, and their event coming up in November is the Extravaganza. They do a bowl show, which is like they've got a ton of fish that they show off there, which is also really cool. Yeah, well run. It's a well run show. It's been at that hotel for many, many years. The hotel itself, I would guess it's probably sold out, but there's a bunch of hotels in the Strongsville area that you could. And if you remember, I said the Cleveland Aquarium is one of the best for freshwater fish displays. That's not that far. So if you went to the OCA, either on the way there or the way back, it is right off. It's in downtown Cleveland, right off the highway there, and it's absolutely worth adding that to your trip.
Anablobs.
Well, we don't know if they still have them there.
Well, I hope
been a
they
long
do.
time. M&C, thank you so much for being a prime timer the last 14 months. Appreciate it. Rescue 3 Pro Gouramis from a 75. They were bullying other fish in the tank. Never seen pearls be aggressive. I haven't either, but again, you just never know with some fish, right? Who knows? I have found, and this is going to sound stupid, and I'm not going to say it's a scientific observation. Anecdotally, from my personal observation, I have found, at least with the blues, the golds, and the opalines, when I've raised them in cichlid tanks, they tend to be much more assertive than if I've raised them in a semi-aggressive just community tank with just barbs and tetras and stuff. I think they just pick up on certain behaviors to the point, and I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but you know how African cichlids, especially the Mbuna, when they get angry with one another, they will do that shimmy, the real quick shimmy, and what they're actually doing is they're like sending water current, and from what I've read, that disrupts the lateral line of the other fish. So they just do this real shimmy. I have seen gouramis, blues, golds, and opalines do that, and I have never seen that before. The other fish that would do that when kept with cichlids was the bala shark.
Oh.
It was the weirdest thing, and I think they learned it from the cichlids. It's crazy. Crazy but true.
Denominus, I know the general rule of thumb is to feed tetras how much they can eat in 2 minutes, but mine gets scared when I get close to the tank, so I can't keep up. What is a more measurable amount to feed them?
It depends on how many tetras you have. It's so weird. If you were to ask me how much to feed fish, we've got 40-something tanks right now, and they all get different amounts of food. And it has become so instinctual where I just chuck in a certain amount of food because I go around and I'll feed my big fish first, my big cichlids and stuff, my vieja, they're all getting their floating food sticks, and I come back around again, kind of do it out of order, and then I feed all my sinking pellets, and then I come back in and feed my flakes. So, but I don't time anything. So it just works out that by the time I get done with round 1, by the time I start round 2 and I get to those tanks that I got round 1, that food is gone, right? And that's usually a couple of minutes. So with the tetras, a couple minutes is pretty good. I don't know if there's a better way to really do it. You just want to make sure that if you don't have, like, if you're not worried about scavenger fish like plecos, like cory cats and stuff like that, you just don't want the stuff falling into the substrate, right? So let them eat, and as long as they're consuming it all, you can feed them a little bit more. And for the most part, most fish don't overeat to the point where they're like, oh, I can't even swim around. There are exceptions, like the Raphael cat you have to be really careful about. But most fish will stop eating when they're like, yeah, I've had enough. They'll just have food that's floating or sinking. So that's really what I use, is I just make sure that all my fish are getting fed. And if I've got a tank where it's mostly fish that are top or mid-water feeders, that I'm not winding up with a bunch of food at the bottom, and I don't have a bunch of food floating around after I get done feeding them after a couple minutes, because then you're right, then it's going to just rot.
Okay, then.
Oh, I thought you had something to say.
No, I got another question.
Okay.
Okay. It's from Razboss. Had a recent outbreak of mouth rot. Been doing my best, but lot of searching around on how to deal with it is confusing. I've lost 8 fish so far. Please help.
Okay, so I'll just tell you my order of treatment when I see anything growing around the mouth, because it can be fungal or it can be bacterial, usually one of those two things. The easiest treatment method for me is the Fritz Maricin Oxy. It's a liquid, really easy to treat. It's something that you're treating, that medication you're using every single day. Most of the time, it begins and ends there. Okay, so the Fritz Maricin Oxy, and it's primarily designed for fungal infections, but I have found it to do pretty well with a lot of bacterial infections that haven't gotten too out of hand. So I start there. If I don't see improvement, usually within a few days, then I switch to my Fritz Maricin 1 and 2. And that's an antibiotic that's going to deal with any bacterial causes of any type of infection around the mouth. If I can't clear it with those, most of the time, my last resort is going to be like a copper safe. And because copper safe is a pretty rough chemical, and it definitely is going to be hard on your cycle. And even the Maricin 1 and 2, because they're antibiotics, one treats gram negative, one treats gram positive, those actually sometimes can be a little rough too. But if that doesn't fix it, and also make sure, especially for fungal, that your temperatures are proper, because if your temperatures get too low, sometimes fungal infections will start to grow a little bit more aggressively as well. But usually the Maricin Oxy does its job. Every once in a while I have to switch to Maricin 1 and 2, but most of the time I've got it covered. Do I still lose some fish? So if I've got a tank where it's like, hey man, I'm seeing this thing happen and a dozen fish, am I going to lose 1 or 2? Probably. Yeah. It's just the nature of the game, unfortunately. Cat, do you know if Flip Aquatics is an actual store or is it online only? Right now it is, for the most part, online only. They have a facility, but yeah, it's online. And a very good source, I might add. That's why we partner with them. That's why they're a channel sponsor.
Oink's here.
Oink!
I just pulled in, but I'm here with you listening. Oh,
well, we're glad you're here, because we
yay.
were just mentioning, Ed's here. And I don't
That's
know.
right.
Ed without Oink, Oink without Ed. I'm just not.
doesn't sound right.
Ed, I asked James this question. Now, James, I didn't even see your response, or if you responded. Not James Nature Aquatics, but, Fish
Room Fever,
Fish Room
James?
Fever. Ed, Oink, are you guys going to be in Daytona? I'm trying to get the band back together, man. It'd be cool if Joey was there. Just have the old group where we could all just kind of hang out, and John and Lisa, and yeah, it'd be fun. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Sky says, yeah, Maricin Oxy saved our better. That stuff is a highly underrated medication, in my opinion. It is usually my go-to, especially because all these fish that I quarantine. If I see something wrong that is clearly not ick, I'll usually hit it, especially if it's happening in the first day or two. Boom, in goes the Maricin Oxy, and probably 75% of the time that does the trick.
Let's see, Evans.
Echo Delta. Hello, what's up?
Oh, hey, Echo Delta.
Say hello to Mabel.
Hello, Mabel.
All
Evan said, I think he's is talking to Kat. I don't believe they have an in-person shop anywhere, but Jason would know for sure. Do you have
Yeah.
an in-person shop?
I literally just answered that question.
I'm just kidding.
She's not kidding. She didn't know. To answer your question, no, not right now. They don't. Although every time I
should,
talk to Rob,
and
I'm
I
like,
should run it.
"Dude, you should have an in-person shop, especially because where they're at with that, where they do their live streams. It really lends itself well to like a gallery,
Yeah.
a gallery shop,
Yeah,
right? Be so cool.
that would be cool. I'd go there all the time.
It says right now it's not looking positive for Daytona, but maybe I'll get lucky and get a phone call. I sure hope so. That would be awesome.
That would be
Webster's
so
John
cool.
needs to have a real job, can't come. Yeah, I know, man. Daytona's fun because the hotel's right there on the beach. Last year it was super windy, windiest Florida time I've ever.
Oh yeah, that's right. It
Fish Room
was
Fever says
windy.
not doing any events this year, focusing on getting the fish room built. Sweet. Well,
Oh.
can't wait to see your finished product. Starting from scratch ain't cheap. Yeah, you're not kidding. Not cheap, and it takes a lot of time. All right. Stephen P 2003, what is going on? We got all the cool kids showing up today.
Yeah. Wow.
Holy cow. JD says, who wins most of the discussions between the two of you? The two of us? Oh, man, I don't know. It's probably 50-50.
He probably thinks he wins, and I probably think I win.
Yeah, and then
you
we're
know,
both
so
happy.
it's,
We both come out winners.
You
and
know. Yeah.
it's all okay. It's all good in the end. We don't have a lot of discussions that go beyond just discussion. Like, we're not really people who, you never, well, not never, but we're not like screamers and yellers or anything like that, or like,
I used to be pretty darn good at slamming a
slamming
door.
doors. Yeah, if I would say
But-
something stupid, doop, 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 boom. That's pretty much the.
It's in
but not
my
anymore.
genes, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that since probably I could walk. It's just in my genes.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in a while.
No, it's
I've
been a
probably
long
lost
time.
the skill.
Well, plus I removed all the doors. I remember telling you when we first got married, like, if you keep doing that, I'm going to remove all the doors. And that
My
made
mom
you
tried
laugh.
that too.
Yeah.
Actually,
And
my
that was the end
mom,
of the argument
I
or
had
whatever
slammed
it
the
was.
door for whatever reason, and so she made me open and close the door 50 times. Although we both started laughing after like 5. So that was that.
Candy has a good question. Can you put a Gourami? I love it. Candy, don't you love spell check? This happens to me too. For whatever reason, most
Doesn't like
people
Gourami.
spell check. When you try to type in Gourami, it comes out Grammy. So can you put a Grammy in the tank with a discus? I definitely would not do the blues or the golds or the opalines. I don't think I would do the dwarfs. Temperature-wise, if you're keeping your discus in the 83 to 84 range, it is warm, but the Gouramis, the pearls, I've kept them there that warm before. I don't know if they loved it, but they did fine. I mean, again, they're a labyrinth fish, so they're used to kind of the stagnant water. I don't know. I could you do it? Maybe. Would I do it? Probably not. If it was mine.
Noelle's here. Done with my drive.
Oh, so-
Now home and lurking while choring.
Oh, Wednesday evening. I almost said
Taking
Monday.
off 2 things at once.
Wednesday
That's pretty
evening
cool.
chores.
Make
Stephen
sure you
Peace-
finish your chores, Noelle.
Yeah, Stephen P says slamming doors make the rainbow fish freak out and run into stuff. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, ballast sharks, tinfoil barbs, silver
Yeah.
dollars. That's the other thing I got in that. I was mentioning earlier the Pearl Gourami 125. The other thing I have in there is for those of you, especially the prime timers, remember I was like debating what am I going to do with my full grown silver dollars? They're not easy fish to bag up and bring to a swap. They're big, right? They're like the palm of my hand size now. And so they need a lot of oxygen. I'm like, what am I going to do with these things? So I wound up just sticking them in the other 125 with all the random fish, the cichlids. They're like loving life in there. First of all, I ate all the duckweed that was in there.
Cool.
That was left. And they are absolutely loving life. Troy says, my Gourami doesn't like discus. Ah, see? Yeah.
So Oink says, I'm an oldest child of 3 girls, but not a twin. Does your twin have the door slam gene as well? No.
No, she's
We
just-
share a brain, but no, I got all of the door slamming.
there was only
ability.
enough door slamming genes to go around for one.
And I took it.
She took it. That's why we just have curtains over all the doors now. You can slam a curtain. No, we don't actually do that. I mean, we don't actually have curtains up for doors. That would be, strange, I suppose.
That would be pretty like
I mean, it wouldn't be strange
boho.
if like you're.
That'd be like boho.
Depending on the situation. When you got like a bunch of kids running around, then it would be maybe not the best. Hold on, I saw something that I wanted to answer. You guys are cracking me up in this chat. You're having all kinds of crazy conversations now. Here's one. Adrian says, I had a pest snail problem, so I got an assassin snail. Now I have assassin snail infestations in 2 tanks. Help, what can I do to remove them? Okay, 1.
Huh.
Here's the nice thing about assassin snails, in my opinion, especially if you have sand, they burrow. So when the lights are on, at least my assassin snails in the tanks where I have them, I got them in like 3 or 4 tanks, I generally don't see them too. They're pretty. They are very pretty snails. They're kind of like nearite snails, only smaller, and they kill other snails. So they got that going for them. 3, those snails are snails that you could actually sell, and they're easy to ship. So I wouldn't be too fast on just scooping them out. If you're really dead set on just removing them, you're like, I don't want to bother selling them, bring them to not a Petco or a PetSmart, but like an actual like local fish store. My guess is they wouldn't mind buying them from you, because shipping large quantities of snails from import or wholesale is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. The survival rates aren't always the best. So if you've got an outlet to sell them, try that first. If not, if they're burrowing in sand, just take a net that's got a relatively large like pore size, and you can just go right through that sand. It stinks a little bit more if you got a planted tank, so be careful there. But like what I've done in some of the tanks is just scoop them right out with a net right through the sand, and then the sand falls through the net, and I've got a bunch of snails. That works really well, by the way, for those of you who have Malaysian trumpet snails, and you're like, I am never winning this battle. If you just take a net, scoop them right out.
Except if you have gravel.
If you got gravel, then that's not going to work. The other thing that you can do is the assassin snails, more than a lot of other types of snails, go crazy for just regular fish food, right? So especially things like bloodworms and stuff. There is, where is it? Is it up? It's upstairs, darn it. Sera. Let me spell it out for you here in the chat. S-E-R-A. This company, Sera, just re-released the snail trap that I did a video on probably 4 or 5 years ago. It worked so well that people were actually accusing me of faking, like, I don't know, they thought I was like hand-picking snails and chucking them in there. I have time to do that. But that Sera snail trap is probably my all-time favorite for catching snails. You'd probably have to put in, I don't know if you could do just a regular wafer. You might have to put in a little bit more food that's got more of a animal base to it, or a plant, not a plant base, but a protein base. But that would definitely trap a lot. Candy Gourami and discus, I personally would not do that. All right, let me see here. I saw, where did it go? Jay says, I really miss when the fire-bellied toads were common in the hobby. I've wanted to keep them again for years. Gosh, you know what? I kind of forgot about that. And the salamanders, right? I mean, that was another one where you don't see salamanders in pet stores the way you used to. Because that was a really, we used to keep those all the time as kids. When we were kids, we had our own built-in pet store, because we would just go down to the creek, and to my parents' credit, especially my mom, as long as they were well confined, she didn't really care. Like, the only time she got really upset is we went to the creek one time and we scored huge that day. I think I brought home 2 turtles, 8 frogs, more crayfish than I could count, and probably 2 snakes. I mean, that was like our day. We would just have buckets and we'd bring them back, and most of the time the snakes could not come in the house. That was a rule. They had to stay in the garage. And so we'd keep the snakes for like the summer, and then we knew when it was getting cold we were going to have a hard time, because back then, I don't know, we didn't know as kids like heat lamps and all that stuff. So we would re-release the snakes in the fall. Turtles we could keep. Frogs and turtles we could bring in the house. But one time I brought in my frogs. I had 8 of them, just like the regular green frogs. And again, they were in a tank that was too small. I was a kid, right? I was like 7 or 8 years old, maybe 9. Brought the frogs into the house, went to go clean the tank, took the lid off, was messing around with the rocks and like draining out the water. Well, the frogs got out of whatever container they were in, and they were hopping all over the house. I think I found
It's
most
awful.
of them, but I never found 2 of them. And I think it was 2. And then at that point, Mom's like, all right, no more frogs in the house. But she would let us keep toads because the toads they were a little bit easier to keep, a little bit easier to care for. But we had everything when we were kids, man.
James
Snakes.
says we got in trouble for black widows once.
Yeah, I
Ew.
think that would be one where
That's
you might get in some
awful.
trouble for that one.
oh
Yeah. But frogs, I found, and to this day, I don't know what this was. Maybe somebody does. Again, you have to think Illinois. This was, I don't know what this snake was. It was probably the coolest animal I've ever kept. It was about maybe, this is hard because I was a kid, so everything is probably larger as a kid. But it seemed like it was a snake that might have been about 2 feet long. It was a light tan snake, really one of the most friendly snakes I've ever had, but it had a flat pink belly. I mean, flat. So it was like almost like a half circle shape. I loved this snake. And I remember this was one of the snakes where I was going to be like, I'm keeping this thing. And I was playing with it in the front yard. And what was fun about that snake is it was really good in water. Like it would just go really fast. Well, I was playing with it in water in like the curb. And I didn't catch it in time. I went right down into the sewer. And I was heartbroken. Like for days, I was like, I lost my snake. When we were kids, you could pick up the big sewer grate. Like if you had 2 or 3 strong kids, you could pick it up and jump down there. And I jumped down there looking for it. And I couldn't, I mean, it was gone. That snake was super fast. It was like, boom.
he went off and lived his best life.
Yep, he did. But that was the coolest snake I'd ever had. One of the coolest animals I've ever had in my life. It was a light tan with a pink underbelly. And to this day, and I've tried to Google it, and I just can't find it. Yeah.
Oh, Zen Ginger says, per Google, flat-headed snake. This snake has a brown back, a salmon pink belly,
I'm
and
looking
a
this up.
darker head than the rest of its body.
Wait, what is it called?
Flat-headed snake.
Hold on, I got to look it up real quick.
It's usually found under rocks.
I pulled it. So I pulled this snake out of we would go in this tunnel under a highway it had water and rocks underneath, but it had like all these cracks in the tunnel, and I pulled that snake out of the crack, and oh my gosh, God, this one here, the iNaturalist picture. I would love to see a picture of this thing.
How about like that one right there? That middle one.
This one?
That one.
Yeah, that looks really similar. So look up the flat-headed. I'm not going to put it up there because some of you don't like snakes, so I'm not going to do that to you.
That would be me.
Yeah, so
Yuck.
that's why I'm not putting it up there. That very well may have been, but we're going to get off the subject of the...
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that looks really similar. But again, my memory as a adult now, going back probably over 40 years, is not so great anymore. Tony B, thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. On the subject of snails, what do you think is the best foods? Does it need to be calcium rich? If your water is not hard, yeah, calcium infused foods, mineral infused foods, and we're not sponsored by them at all. Cat's Aquatics, Kats, Cat's Aquatics. I love her snail food. I met her when she was a high school student it was Aquatic Experience, I think, in New Jersey. Might have been the first time she came around as a high school student, and she had a project that she was working on in a business class where she was starting a snail food. And I thought that was really impressive. And so I got to meet her, and I think her dad was there. And I don't know if her little brother was there, but she has taken that business and turned it into a company and sells some really good snail foods. So the Cat's Aquatics Foods is absolutely one that I highly recommend. Good stuff for your snails if you want to actually feed them, keep them alive, like your mystery snails, especially if you're seeing that the snail shells are starting to get a little thinner. That's a really good one.
Rodney says, try again. My sponge filter bubble is not popping as fast and sticking into the glass, and how to stop that issue.
It's not popping as fast at the surface. So that sounds like it could have been something that you fed. If there's extra protein, especially extra lipids, fats on the surface of your aquarium, you'll see the bubbles come up. They'll form this big old giant bubble, and then you just kind of float around. Usually that's not so much a sponge filter thing as it is a water quality thing. So just double check your your water quality. So make sure no ammonia. That can also happen with an ammonia spike. So no ammonia, no nitrite. Nitrates at 20 parts per million or less would be pretty close to ideal. And then if it's not any of those things, sometimes sponge filters get a little clogged up. So you could look at the actual eyelet that where the hose hooks up to. But if you're getting a lot of bubbles and they're just getting big and not popping, it's usually water quality. It's not the sponge filter itself. Chris, thank you very much for the super chat. Just showing some love for the gudgeon in the low boy. Looks awesome when it's switched by. Is he back there? Yeah. Oh, there he is. There's actually all three of them are up there in the corner behind Joanna because they know it's getting close to feeding time. I'll tell you right now, purple spot gobies, those guys are one of the most personable, and gobies are generally very personable. Those dudes are almost like cichlid personable, where they're like looking at you like, hey man, is it time to eat? My ugly face is pretty hungry. But yeah, they're very personable fish. Hold on, I saw.
Blasted 95. Have you ever heard of feeding banana peels to fry? Had an older guy tell me to put a banana in a jar in the sun for a day, pour the water in with the fry.
I have not done that, so I don't know what that will do to water quality, but doesn't mean can't work.
I don't know.
I just have not tried that. A lot of people are backing me up on the whole Cat's Aquatics snail food. That's good to hear. Glad other people like it as well. Adrian asked, anyone have some rare South American cichlids in Chicagoland area looking to start a collection of some oddballs? That's a good question. I would say your best bet is GCCA, I would think, or drive out to the Quad City swap, because that's probably where you're going to find people breeding some stuff that maybe you're not going to find at the pet store. Other than that, from a local fish store perspective, I think you're most likely to find the oddballs at Aquatics. I'm not saying you will, but every once in a while you'll walk in there and be like, oh, that's something I haven't seen in a while. For the South American side. They generally have, for African cichlids, almost every time I've gone there, they've got something that's a little bit uncommon. Okay, hold on. Don says, I must have a mosquito in the house. I just got bit. Are you feeling woozy? That mosquito really got me, man.
Scratch, scratch, scratch.
Oh, here's one. KB says, I'm thinking of ditching floating plants altogether. None of the tanks in the background have floating plants. What is the reason for that? The reason is why? Why don't we have floating plants? Because for the most part,
we have Bacopa and it does kind of float.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's a
when I think
quasi
of floating, I think of like the guppy grass and the hornwort.
Yeah, I know. I'm just throwing it out there because it looks so cool.
I don't think
surface.
It would grow in the tanks in the background for the most part, because we're running canister filters in all these tanks, and there's a lot of flow at the top. So for those of you who have duckweed issues, or you've got something floating where it's too much, high flow, a wave maker, you can forget your duckweed. It's gone. That in and of itself over time will kill it. Plus, there's a lot of fish, like the fish by my head over here, the ambunas. You got the yellow labs and the psiloci. They would eat any floating plants. In this tank over here behind Joanna's head, we've got some rainbow fish, and the snakeskin barbs will eat certainly like the duckweed, like that. There's not a shred of duckweed in there. They might. I don't know if they would eat hornwort. Probably not. But yeah, it's just we wanted that clean look at the top of the tank, and with the canister filters blowing out as much as they do, it'd be hard for the floating plants even to do anything in there.
All right, Ben and Glenn both say that it sounds like a paramecium culture with the banana peel.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, where it was more of a situation with microfauna than it was the actual nutrients from the peel. When I first heard that was kind of what I was thinking too. So
and
I like where you're going with that.
Kat says I use banana peel water on my house plants.
Oh, the potassium. Okay. Interesting.
Good to know.
That's pretty cool. All right, I think we've got time for maybe one or two more, huh? Joshua says, can my fiance and I get married in your fish room? It's a great venue. I don't know if it'd be quite big enough.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't think your fiance would appreciate that.
Yeah, like it's hot in there. Oh my gosh,
Smells
could you imagine?
like fish food.
Like you're wearing like your wedding dress and you're in a tux, and it's like, you really do keep this fish room at 82 degrees.
Oh my
yes, we do. It's a little humid. Yeah, it's 50%
Yeah.
humidity and 82 degrees. How you feeling?
Pretty.
A little warm, slightly uncomfortable. My bride-to-be's makeup is running. Oh, that's unfortunate. All right, everybody. I think we are going to call it a night. Really appreciate you being here. We had a lot of nice questions. Thank you for all the super chats and the new prime timers that came on board. And thank you so much to all the moderators for hanging out with us tonight. It was a fun one. It was fun talking about gouramis for a while. Love the questions you all brought. If we didn't get a chance to answer your question, don't worry. Bring it next Wednesday. We'll be back here, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll try to answer as many as we can next week. Will we have a topic? Maybe. Will we have a giveaway? Most likely. So thank you once again. Appreciate you hanging out. We will see you all next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the last of the nice weather.
Yes.